really, it's kind of fascinating. He consistently, Joe Scarborough on MSNBC on Morning Joe, he consistently calls himself a Republican, but he espouses views that are so far to the left of the Republican Party. And so it's interesting because you've got, well, first, before I get into all that, welcome to the show, StacyOnTheRight.com, UrbanFamilyTalk.com, AFR.net, 866-963-2037. Those are the call lines. They're wide open for you. Today on the show, we do have two guests. We have Michele Holt of Politichicks and Will Robert. He's head of the College Republicans for the University of Alabama. And they're both going to come on today and talk about a host of fantastic things. You know, we always have the best guests. I don't mind saying it. We really do. We have great guests on here. But we also have this audio from Joe Scarborough that we just listened to. And so the part that I didn't get for you, and let me make sure I'm not. Oh, yeah, we did actually have a little bit more. We'll listen to the other bit of that, talking about the gun control and all of that. The point to the Morning Joe audio is that they're basically saying the hard right needs to give up some room on guns, and the hard left should give up some room on the abortion issue. But here's why those two things aren't in the same realm. Abortion is the snuffing out of an innocent life for convenience. Health of the mother is about 1% of the abortions. And in today's age, when we're talking about the technology that we have, where you can take a baby that's 20 weeks old out of the womb and that baby can survive, viability is really never the issue. So health of the mother is very rarely the case why an abortion is had. Usually it's because of extenuating circumstances that have more to do with contraception failing than anything else. And so, and if that's the case, I'll give you health of the mother, rape and incest. You give me convenience and we'll save 900,000 lives a year. How about that? You know, just we can make a deal. Okay, let's make a deal. So when I'm listening to Joe talk about that, he sounds pretty logical on the issue of abortion. He doesn't sound logical on the issue of guns. There is no magic panacea that you can do with guns. Confiscation, not going to work. People keep comparing us to Australia and Great Britain, countries that did not have a right to bear arms in the Constitution that people were raised with. We're supposed to take what they did with their guns and we're supposed to say, yeah, well, that will work here in America. Lots of things that work in Europe don't work in America. I mean, just look at mass transit. They have all those bullet trains. They have what's called Straßenbahns in Germany, which are, they're like trolley cars, really, but they're high speed, and they have them all over. There's a huge difference between the nation state of Germany and the entirety of the United States of America. So just stop, liberals. Stop comparing things that aren't in the same realm of possibility. That's number one. Number two, thanks for being really like sounding conservative, Joe. It's an interesting thing to hear. So let's listen to the rest of this. It's Scarborough too. He's got so much more to say about this issue. He's explaining it. And I don't know. I want to know what you think about it. You can call in if you want to. It's number 5.
But this is an example of science, technology changing that is going to change the politics of abortion, where suddenly, again, viability, when Jack was born early, you go into the NICU and kids even 9 years ago were surviving 24 weeks in. This is an issue that culturally is going to change. Americans, younger voters, are going to become more conservative on abortion because they see their child very early on in the womb. The same thing's going to happen with guns. Your kids are watching other kids getting gunned down in schools. That's going to have an impact.
Science is chasing politics in both those cases. And, you know, Peggy Noonan wrote a really interesting column on Saturday, I think.
It was a wonderful column.
Where she said, she had a proposal at the end that was shocking at first when you read it. Basically said the right should give on late-term abortion. I'm sorry, the left should give on late-term abortion. And the right should give on some of these gun restrictions, particularly with respect to assault weapons. And that's a vote, she said, for life in general. And she cited young people as a changed political factor.
Because she is ahead of the curve in all of these cultural issues. I think Peggy has a unique sensibility. And
it was an interesting trade-off.
The first thing I pick up on.
Right.
And they sound so reasonable, don't they? Don't they sound just, they sound like they're just sitting in a coffee shop and there's no politics involved here. It's just good common sense, logical reasoning that they're peddling off to us. And that would be fine if that's what they were doing. But that's not what they're doing. They're trying to take an issue that is a fundamental issue to the humanity of a country, whether or not we consider unborn human beings to be a matter of convenience. And they're trying to equate that with the right to keep and bear arms and defend yourself. It wasn't every gun owner in America that gunned down 17 people on Friday of last week. It was one deranged individual. And by deranged, I don't buy this idea that anyone who kills people in a mass shooting is mentally ill. That's not my thing. Play that game with someone else. My thing is the human heart is depraved and wicked. And it's only my thing because it's written in the Bible. Not because I want to think that way, but because that's what the Bible says about us. So in light of that, disarming Americans so that they're at the whim of every deranged individual who's giving in to their worst impulses, that sounds like a bridge too far. Or to be more real, that sounds ludicrous. It's ridiculous. Besides the fact that they have not shown us one gun law that would have prevented what happened on Friday, or what happened the week before that, or what happened a week before that. There are no gun laws that prevent criminals from saying, I'm going to go kill some people, because it's already illegal to kill. This isn't an access issue, because criminals will always have access to guns because they'll always be willing to buy them. It is an issue with our FBI. We really need to look at who's responsible for this, for letting this guy slip through the cracks. 2 exposures to the FBI, 2 reports, nothing there. That's something that we should look into. The rest of this stuff? Sorry, no thanks. All right. So we went over a little bit on yesterday's program. We talked a little bit about Suzanne Vinker, the author, and she'd written 2 pieces. One we shared yesterday. I want to give you a couple of little facts from her other piece. And these are both up at foxnews.com. You can find them at the Fox News Opinion site. I write for them occasionally, and she's much more frequent over there in her topic area, which is marriage, family, kids, divorce, MGTOW, all of that stuff. And so she's got this recent article that we discussed yesterday, and then she talks about divorce and family breakdown. She had an email from someone who asked her, if divorce and the family situations that Americans are facing are really so catastrophic for kids. But the primary reason divorce is so catastrophic in our current cultural norm is that it separates kids from their fathers. And I know there are situations where men are abusive or they're, involved in drugs or what have you. We're not talking about situations where the father is a hazard to the kids, is involved in illegal activity, is danger to the family. We're talking about those everyday run-of-the-mill dads who are actually, they're good dads. They are in a divorce situation with their wife, and as a result of the divorce, they're separated off from their kids. That is what we're talking about. So we're talking about fatherlessness, and that is more often the case. We're not talking about, the abuse situations are not the primary reason why people divorce. It is a factor for some divorces, but it's not the overarching cause of divorce. So it's destructive for girls and boys to live without their fathers, but each of the children experiences it differently. Girls who grow up deprived of their father are more likely to become depressed, to engage in self-harm. They're more likely to be promiscuous, but they still have their mothers with whom they can clearly identify. In the case of the boys, they don't have the comparable identification. So the boys are living in the home with their sisters and their moms, and everything tends to be female oriented. And this is true. Just think about this for a second. I'll take myself for the example. If my husband wasn't here, if he didn't actually chime in about our decor choices, every room in our house would have some floral print in it, whether it was the pillows or the curtains or something. As it is now, we have almost no florals at our house anymore because I've kind of moved away from them. But at one point, we had florals and toile and all kinds of decor items that indicated that women lived in the premises. we had that in spades. And my husband didn't really say much. Like he would say, that, wow, we have 3 floral prints in here. So when he finally did start to say, it was when Miles started getting older, he'd say, man, we have a lot of florals in almost every room. Can we get some, can we get a little bit of equal representation here? And I remember thinking to myself, why would we need a room that didn't have florals in it? And then, I kind of listened to him, of course, because his opinion does matter. He lives at our house. He pays for all the stuff in it. And so, but I'm using that as an example, a lighthearted example, to point to how we each tend to be more oriented towards what primarily we enjoy. And that is the beauty of the male-female relationship and the balance that comes together in a marriage. And so when you have one missing, if it were just my husband, all of the rooms would be tan. Every piece of furniture, all the walls would be white or blue. And that would be, there'd be no balance. There'd be no mix. So with that being said, is it any wonder why, if our divorce courts place the primary function of parenting on the mothers in a divorce situation, that the boys are left without anyone to identify with? They're left in a home that's primarily situated and oriented towards their mom and their sisters. Now, if it's just a mom, at least they have more of a fighting chance, but they're still only their mom. And I know some outstanding single moms. I do. One in particular comes to mind. But there are many out there who do an outstanding job of raising their sons. They have male influences in their lives, and their houses aren't full of florals, as if, that doesn't negatively impact your sons. But I'm just keeping with the theme here. And so this isn't an indictment of women who are in this situation. And, you weren't the one who wanted the divorce. And this isn't about that. But it is to say that having those fathers in the home, it was much more prevalent before. And it's much less prevalent now. And the result of that is what we're seeing. And so this is the conversation that we have to have. And maybe it's a little more difficult to have this conversation. Maybe it makes people uncomfortable to talk about divorce. If you're divorced, or if you have divorced family members, it's going to be more uncomfortable. But it's a more impactful conversation. It's the conversation that gets us to a place where we can understand what these children are experiencing and we can help them. Talking about guns is just going to make some people mad and turn some people off of the conversation completely. I'm off completely because there's no way I'm giving up any firearms. No, it's just not going to happen. And there's multiple 10s, 20s, 30s of millions of people just like me. So let's have the real conversation and discuss what's really going on here and how we can really help these children, these young men. They're not killing for no reason. Calling them monsters doesn't get us anywhere. All right, when we get back, we have Michele Holt of Politichicks. She's going to join the program. Stay right there.
Hi, this is Kirk Cameron, and I am honored to be partnering with the Ministry of Preborn and American Family Radio to help moms choose life.
Actor Kirk Cameron supports Preborn.
My 4 oldest children were adopted. That is because of caring and compassionate people who help those young mothers choose life. My wife is an adopted child, and her birth mother chose life for her. If it weren't for those caring individuals that help those young moms value the sacredness of life, I wouldn't have my wife, I wouldn't have my 4 adopted children, and the 2 natural-born children that we have wouldn't exist either. My whole family is here because of people that are involved with ministries like Preborn.
Underwrite a free ultrasound and help save a baby's life. Go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. Have you ever had someone close to you do something so terribly disappointing that literally caused you to grieve? I remember doing that to my dad when I was 12 years old. I'll never forget his words. I had done something that really violated everything that he had taught me, some of the very high standards he had and his expectations of both my sisters and me. And I violated that. When he found out about it, I'll never forget this. He looked me in the eye with tears in his own eye, and he said, "Boy, you hurt my heart." My actions, my disobedience was so painful to him that it literally caused him to grieve. It hurt him. Did you know that God feels the same about us? Even though God is sovereign and he knows us and what we're going to do, God has a personality and he has emotions. He has feelings. And sometimes the things we do and say hurt and grieve his heart. Listen to these words in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 30. "And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption." Do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God. We can cause the Holy Spirit emotional pain. When we violate God's principles, that Spirit who lives within us, the third person of the Godhead, is grieved. What's the point, you say? Sin is no light thing. It's no light matter. We don't just hurt ourselves and those around us. We hurt the very heart of God. Well, here's what I want you to remember and do today. God loves us so much, he's hurt when we sin. His pain ought to be a deterrent to sin in our lives. Much like my father's tears caused me to never, ever do what I did again.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org. Join Crawford tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Hey there. It's your hostess with the mostest. 866-963-2037. And yeah, I'm thinking to myself, I feel a little tired. Let me just tell y'all a quick little story, a quick little anecdote. Right before we get to our guest. So today was at BSF and we sung, you sing a hymn together at BSF if you're in a large group. And we sung How Great Thou Art. And by the time we got to the third verse, because we sing all four of the verses, I'm sorry, but it was getting dusty in there. And I was just weeping at the magnitude of what we've been given. And it's such a weighty thing if you think about what God has given to us and how gracious he's been to us in giving us, creating us in his image, giving us free will and allowing us to choose whether or not we want to have a relationship with him. And then to get to go on into eternity in relationship with him. It's such a wonderful thing. And so it's one of those weeks where I'm pretty sure I'm going to be a little bit of a weepy basket case all week because so we have some milestones with our oldest daughter this week, some last this, last that. And it is just going to be so much. I'm going to be so, as the youth say, I'm going to be so extra this week. And I don't even know if I'm using that slang correctly, but bear with me. I'm not a youth. So I'm looking forward to that all of these things happening, and I know they are a rite of passage in its time, but boy, I'm already feeling it. It's like I'm on the wave, and I can tell I've got nothing but the scream fest coming up ahead of me and going higher and higher and higher, and then dive bombing to the bottom, almost like a roller coaster. But there it is. So yeah, that happened this morning, and I wasn't the only one. I glanced over and I caught another lady dabbing her eye too. So I was like, yes, those old hymns, we don't give them enough credit. I know at our church we listen to contemporary Christian music, and we could really use some of those old hymns again. It would be so wonderful to have those. So right now, it's my pleasure to welcome our first guest of the program today. It's Michele Holt. She's a contributor for Politichicks and good friend of mine and of the Stacy on the Right show. Michele, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, Stacy. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here because we have so much going on news-wise, and I'm not going to talk about the gun control or the whole thing with the Parkland shooting. Obviously, we're all grieving for the families there who lost their children and their family members. But we also are going to be looking at some of the big stories, which one of those is the idea the Democrats have now just recently broached on television that we need to wait until after the midterm elections to release the results of the Mueller investigation. And I'm thinking that's just not what we need to do.
No. Don't you just love Democrats and how they want to wait until after an election before we find out what exactly is going on? It's much better, as you know, with the mainstream media that's in their pocket to just kind of keep the mantra going that there's something there when there's not. so that, their hope is to win the elections and the midterms and take over Congress.
And then we'll learn that there was nothing. Like, why would we permit that? Why would President Trump not say, okay, so investigation's winding down. We'll need your findings. It's been a year.
Yeah.
You've been at it a whole year. So go ahead. Because a year is going to be what? June, I think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So come on, Michele. Yeah. I mean, can we come up with 3 good reasons why we would wait until after the midterms if we were Republicans? I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking about this the other day. They keep talking about, we really think this is the momentum we're going to have to take over, and the Republicans are really going to lose. And remember, they thought this the whole time that Trump and Hillary were in the race for the presidency, and look how they got it wrong. Then, can you imagine on these midterms? They're just so sold on the fact that they are going to gain control. And they really are still out of touch with what the American people, the average Joes out there or average Jones out there, what they really want in our government. It's not more government. It's not bigger government. It's not more spending. And they're tired of it. And, it's going to be funny to see. I really think they're going to get a rude awakening come midterms.
Well, that's my hope and my prayer, is that there's a rude awakening for them. But we can't count on anything, take anything for granted. And honestly, so for me, I know this sounds weird because it sounds almost like I'm about to say, I don't care what the results are, I want them before the midterm, even if it's detrimental to the Republicans. But I kind of do feel like that, Michele. I'm sorry. I just feel like,
exactly.
Have you ever been inside of something and you think, I don't want the answer? And then you've waited so long, you think to yourself, I don't care if the answer is the worst news I can get. I just need the answer now so I can move on. You just need to shut that door. Even if shutting it is like one of the worst things that you could experience, you're just ready to get there. That's what this feels like to me. And not because it's me personally, not because it's the Republicans, but because as an American, I feel like we're all in a state of limbo. Not because I'm a Republican or a conservative, not that, but just as an American society, the news story itself, it's like dragging a dead horse behind us. It's starting to rot, it's starting to stink and decompose, and we're still dragging it. Let's stop dragging that thing, get it bagged up and, buried, and be done with it.
Exactly. And if you remember, back in the days when I was in radio and we had you on the show and we were talking about, the Benghazi scandal and the Fast and Furious, the guns with the FBI and the Attorney General Holder at the time was making all these excuses, and it was just, we felt the same way. Even if there was nothing there, which obviously, there was something there, but even if there was nothing there, let's just go ahead and just bring out the reports and get done with it already. I'm like you. Even if Mueller's investigation brings something forward to the plate that doesn't look good for the Republicans, well, you know what? Then my philosophy is probably like yours. Well, then they shouldn't have done it to begin with. We have to start holding our government accountable for what they do. And I don't care what side of the political aisle you sit on. If you've done something wrong, you should be held accountable for it. And I think that's what the American people are really wanting, is let's just start holding people accountable, because you and I would be held accountable if we were doing something like this,
If held accountable means up underneath the jail with our families going, do you know where my family member is? Then yeah, we would be held accountable, okay?
We sure would.
Yes. You would have already been picked up, and so would I. I would be on the radio, and I'd be like, I'm sorry, what are you doing in here? I'll be right back. And they would just take me off. You have the right to remain silent. I'd be like, can I call my husband? No. Get in this thing. And that because that's how it's happened for so many other Americans. They do something wrong. I mean, look at Mike Flynn. I'm still not even sure what he did wrong. Like, maybe I should just spend some time this afternoon and just really look it up so I can understand. Maybe I haven't applied myself to getting the proper knowledge. Him and I know Manafort has some stuff, but it doesn't have anything to do with the election. So what they're getting Manafort on is old stuff that he did. And, more power to the prosecutions of people who've done something wrong. But the point that I'm saying is, well, so why don't we see Hillary in cuffs? Why are none of the people at the FBI in cuffs over their numerous lapses in, doing their jobs on these shootings that have been happening? I mean, there's just so many people who are running around still shopping and drinking Starbucks, and they should be up under the jail where you and I would be if we did something.
Exactly. And I mean, let's face it, even the IRS, remember how corrupt the IRS was exposed to being.
Koskinen and that other one, what was her name? The chick. Oh darn.
Yeah,
we know. Dark-haired chick. She was walking in her neighborhood and people were harassing her, which I didn't agree with that. Harassing her.
No.
But yeah,
absolutely not.
We know who we're talking about. The lady who was running the IRS, and then Koskinen after that, he was guilty as well. They were guilty.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, I mean, like I said, the average people, you and I would be held to a standard that government is not held to. And I think that's what it is with the American people. We're just kind of tired of watching anyone who has a public office in our government is able to do whatever they want to do and not be held accountable. I mean, good God, Hillary Clinton, like you said, why is she not in handcuffs? But Bill Clinton, even her husband, all the pay for play that they did, with their nonprofit, and they're still walking around. I mean, she's even going on shows and tours and speaking engagements, bashing Trump because Trump should be impeached. Impeached for what?
Well,
impeached for what?
Because he won.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sorry. That I have never seen a woman not get over her feelings like that. Have you?
I have. Yes, I have. And I may or may not have to be guiltily acknowledging that I might have been that woman, who didn't get over something for a while.
No, not you.
Okay. Well, thank you for your kind words. But I mean, we've all been there where we're like, that didn't happen to me. You didn't just do that. We've all been there, but she's so public with hers. So I think if I'd had the public spotlight on me when I was that person, I would have shut that down a lot more quickly because of the embarrassment factor. But she lacks the ability to be embarrassed. Am I right? I mean, the stuff that she should be embarrassed about, like trying to be a part of the Me Too movement when her husband is the poster boy for the Me Too movement. Like, how is that? How did? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it's and I know you touched a little bit on the Parkland shooting earlier with the gun control issue, and let me just say this because what you said was beautiful. I came from 14 years of mental health background, and I actually was involved in cases with DFACS, DSS, where the kids were taken out of the home because of abuse. So when we're going to talk about kind of reforms, let's not talk about the gun issue. Let's talk about what happens in the home. Let's talk about what we can do as a society to make those changes, because I mean, it's so much of a moral issue, Stacy. I mean, you and I were very large in our faith. Every day I wake up, I have my devotions. When you were talking about the old hymnals, In the Garden is one of my favorites. And, I try to do the best I can and be a blessing every day. Do I make mistakes? Absolutely. But we cannot, as a society, continue to make excuses for what we're doing to the kids. And then just basically brush it off and say, well, no, we just need more gun control. No. Yeah, that's not the case.
It's not. And I want to read you this quote from Suzanne Banker. I know you guys are probably thinking, why does Stacy keep talking about Suzanne Banker? She's that awesome, you guys. Just please check her out. The quote is, she says, the root of fatherlessness rests in two things: our culture's dismissal of men as valuable human beings who have something unique to offer, and its dismissal of marriage as an institution that's crucial to the health and well-being of children. Rarely do I hear someone so perfectly elucidate what the issue is with a particular problem, yet there it is, right? And so I just, I agree with you. It's so important that we do, like you're describing, devotionals and all of that. And those are important things. And if you're listening and you're an atheist and that's not something that you do, I'm not condemning you. This isn't a place where I'm going to try to make you feel bad about where you are in your life and what your commitments are. But as a cultural norm, marriage, fathers, mothers, intact homes, it should be a priority for all of us, regardless of our religious affiliation, because the statistics show that it is the barrier between poverty, mental illness, drug abuse, promiscuity, on and on and on, early incarceration, entrance into the prison pipeline. All of those things are held at bay by marriage, mothers and fathers, and intact homes. And so when we have our circumstances take us outside of that, some people, their spouse leaves them. Some people, they experience, a death in the family, the untimely death of their spouse. We're not saying these things don't happen. We're saying culturally, right, Michele, you look around and everyone's tearing men down.
Absolutely.
Everyone's tearing down marriage. We're doing it wrong. And the kids are literally saying, take a look at this. I'm unhappy. I'm desperate. Take a look at this. These are warning shots and cries for help from these people.
And unfortunately, the reason why we hear so many on the left that are wanting to just discount it all and say, no, it's for more, we need more government control. It's because they don't want to be held accountable for the decisions that they were involved in and made and supported those in government who also made detrimental decisions to the family unit that have brought us to where we are today. And, again, I'm like you. I'm not condemning anyone out there who may be agnostic or atheist or anything like that. That's not what I'm doing either. But what I'm telling you is that as a person of faith, I cannot imagine my life on a daily basis not having God first. I'm sure that I would end up being in situations like we saw or like I saw personally in the 10-plus years that I did DFACS and DSS work. I wasn't there to condemn those families. I was there to help them and try to repair it as much as I could. But you could physically see the devastation of a family unit on a daily basis. And that's what we need to focus on, whether Democrats want to hear it or liberals want to hear it. We have to focus on it. That's the only option we have.
It is. And honestly, this comes down to kind of an ideological issue where you literally feel like, look, the Democrats are the progressive party. They are for, alternative family structures. They're for not condemning people for making morally questionable choices. They're for, tolerate everyone, the yada, yada, yada. And look where we've come. The more prevalent the Democrats' mantra of tolerance and anything goes has become, and more accepted it has become, the worse our indicators have become. You can see in the statistics for families, take any metric, and things have been going on the downhill slide. So much so that liberals last year, they sought to make it a white thing. If you're married and you're middle class and your kids are all in the same marriage, it's a white thing, completely discounting all the Hispanic and black families and Asian families that are intact. It's just lunacy, and we need to get away from it. And you know what? I love it when you come on. Thank you, Michele. Thank you for coming on today.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I greatly miss you, hon.
I know. I miss you, too. We'll have to talk again soon. I'll talk to Demetrius, and we'll get you back on soon. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. We'll be back with more. We're going to listen to Senator Casey talk about how it's a mistake for Mueller to release the final report before the midterm election. You do not want to miss listening to this man basically show all the underpants of the Democrats. They are spinning like crazy. All right. We'll be back with more right after this.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
The night that Leanne Toohey saw Michael Orr cold and alone walking the streets of Memphis, she didn't see God's overarching plan. She didn't know that she and her family would mentor this young man to receive an education and a place in NFL history. All she knew that rainy night was that Michael needed help. When God calls us to act, we get to be a part of His divine intentions. Ephesians says we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works which God prepared in advance for us to do. But these good works, whether it's a call to love, to mentor, or to reach out, are never about us. They're about God.
New York Times best-selling author Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
coming next week on The Dwelling Place. Pastor Al Pittman continues to walk us through the Bible, line by line and verse by verse, to let God show us just how timeless His truth is. That's next week on The Dwelling Place.
Romans 13:14 says, "Clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the desires of the flesh." So what are you clothing yourself with? Whether we realize it or not, what we allow in our temples affects our way of living. We can't feed ourselves junk and expect to hear from the Lord. Clothe yourself with the righteousness of God at urbanfamilytalk.com. Yo, what up, Sid?
Yo, what's up, Mike? How you doing?
Man, I'm good, bro. Just left the club, the usual.
The club? Man, them clubs don't love back, man. You ain't learned yet. You better slow down, dude.
Ah, come on, Sid. You remember those days? We used to turn up together, man.
Used to, brother. I'm on something much different.
Like what, though? I mean, that Jesus music you be rapping about, or beatboxing, or whatever you be doing.
I'm saying, though, that's how I worship. God gave me rap, so I give it back.
Why, though? Gospel rap is boring, man.
Boring? There's nothing boring about the ransom that ransomed me with himself. Took me off the shelf to transform me into my best. Surrounding me with those of like minds. He drops bombs, some of which is found on urbanfamilytalk.com.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
On Friday, also, the Mueller committee has gotten some. Were they indictments or warrants against?
Indictments of some Russian officials.
Do you understand what is happening in that end yet?
No, I don't think I have a full understanding of it, because we won't know until Mr. Mueller releases his report. So as much as we can glean from newspaper stories and discussions about what people think he has, I don't think we'll know anywhere near the full story until he issues his report. Now, I don't know if that report will be this spring or this summer, but once you get into the summer and you get close to the election, I think it's a mistake for him to release it late.
I agree.
I think he should wait till after. Yeah.
I agree with you.
Welcome back to the show. Are you laughing? Are you giggling because that's a Democrat? Okay. Well, first, welcome back to the program. 866-963-2037. We will be taking calls all throughout this last segment of the first hour. And we'll also be possibly just giggling through this segment as well. I'm sorry that I can't stop laughing because of what he just said. So who was that? Let's see. It was Senator Casey. He's a Democrat. He was on a program. Which program was he on? He was on the Cats Roundtable. It's called the Cats Roundtable. And the host is John Katzimatidis. That's his last name. He is the host. And Senator Casey, Democrat, Pennsylvania, said it would be a mistake for special counsel Robert Mueller to release his final report on Russia before the 2018 midterm elections. Now, he says he doesn't think he has a full understanding of the original probe. Neither do I. But I'm not a senator. Nobody pays me $178,000 a year to have a full understanding of the probe. So first strike for you, Mueller, or what's his name? What's his last name? Casey. First strike for you, Casey. You don't know what the full scope of the thing is and you're being paid to know it. That's not cool. Okay? He also says he thinks it would be a mistake. He should wait until after the midterms. So why do you guys think that is? I have my own suppositions. I'll go ahead and share them with you since it's a show. The reason he doesn't want it to come out before the midterms is because they could have a reopening of the investigation per former FBI Director James Comey Part 2. Yeah, Part 2, a repeat of last year, where information that came out right before the election negatively impacted the Democrats. And that is probably most likely, yeah, that's going to happen. What's going to happen? Yeah, you know why? Because they've overplayed their hand again. Yes, these people actually thought that they could first set up the collusion and then collude themselves and then blame it all on Trump and then impeach him and then get rid of him and then blame it all on him again. Which I have to point out that, first of all, they're not impeaching President Trump. But if they were able to somehow pull that Herculean effort off, he doesn't have to leave office. Bill Clinton was impeached too. So what? You get impeached, but if you don't leave, you don't leave. You just stay there. It's up to them. Unless there are high crimes and misdemeanors, meaning there's something criminal and actionable. And according to Dershowitz, collusion isn't something the president can even engage in, especially since he wasn't president at the time. So all the long and the short of it is their chickens are coming home to roost. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I shouldn't have done that one. So anyway, these people are having what they set as a trap for someone else come back on them, which is actually biblical. Remember, we've talked about this before. The Bible says the boulder you set up to roll on your neighbor will roll back on you. That's why you're not supposed to set traps for people. Now, it's fine to, obviously you have a babysitter at your house and you suspect that she's doing stuff to your infant or your kids and you set up a little camera just to, double check and make sure everything's fine. That's not setting up a trap. Whatever is going on is going to go on, whether you have the camera there or not. But if you're actually, this is what they did. They paid a guy to do opposition research, and that was the Hillary Clinton campaign operating as the DNC. When they got the opposition research back and they didn't second source it or verify it and find out, is any of this true? Then later they're going forward to the election and she's going to win. So they don't even use it. She loses and everybody at the FBI, or not everybody, but at least the special agents / Jason Bourne wannabes, Page and Strzok, they're like, oh yeah, we gotta do something about this. We gotta protect America from Donald Trump. So, and then they'd already used that. The Obama administration had already in June and then gotten it reauthorized 90 days later, used the dossier, which they had actually cleaned up and dressed up to make it look like it wasn't opposition research. They took that to the FISA court, got a warrant to listen and tap into Trump World, not Trump himself, but Trump World and Trump Tower. And then they used what they heard to basically start building a case against him and some of the people who worked around him. The only problem is they thought when they tapped into Trump World, they were going to hear all kinds of salacious, horrible, dirty dealings and illegal activity. And instead, they just heard a business guy and a whole lot of Donald Trump talking about how awesome he is. That's what they heard. And so then they get into the actual Trump administration, and Comey actually lays up at night thinking, I really want a special prosecutor, but I can't get one on my own. It won't look right if I do it. So he then puts forward to a friend at Columbia University who has connections at the New York Times, you do this. You put this out there so we can get our special prosecutor. And lo and behold, Comey is a little bit of an operator, because that's exactly what happened. I mean, how could he not know, as director of the FBI in his extensive history working in the intelligence apparatus of our government, how you get a special prosecutor appointed? He knew that. So that's what he did. He put the wheels in motion to get it to happen. And now you got Donald Trump in a very, very precarious situation, which again, set up for him by FBI Director Comey, because he'd been making memos of their conversations, typing like a little teenage girl on a blog in a dark car on the White House grounds in the middle of the night after every one of their dinners, every time they met. And he's doing this. Why? Because he's just as intent on getting rid of the Trump presidency as anybody else is. And yet now we're hearing, lo and behold, that this guy, Senator Bob Casey, Democrat from Pennsylvania, he wants to wait until after the midterms to hear the results of the investigation. Now, wasn't I just told by so many people, Simone Sanders, Andrea Mitchell, Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski, on and on and on, the harpies at The View. Everybody who's a Democrat or a surrogate for the Democrats has said up and down, that there was collusion, that Hillary Clinton lost the election improperly because Republicans, led by then candidate Donald Trump, colluded with the Russians to materially impact the election and keep Hillary Clinton, the first female superhero of in real life of our times, out of the White House. And so we need to get to the bottom of this. They've been banging their little fists on the table and stomping their little finely shod shoes, little feet. They've been just stomping and zipping and running and jumping up and down and laying down on the ground and kicking their feet like toddlers. We need to get to the bottom of this. He better not get rid of the special prosecutor. If he does, that's an impeachable offense. We know he's guilty. He doesn't want the investigation to go forward. So Donald Trump has sat back on his hands, and the only thing he's been doing is tweeting. Well, you know what? There's been no collusion. That's what he said. They tapped my wires, he says. He's just tweeting. The only thing I've got is Twitter. They've been wiretapping me. And everybody, he's never been wiretapped. President Obama said, he's never been tapped. He sounds like he's a conspiracy theorist. Turns out he was wiretapped. Not only wiretapped, but he was FISA tapped. That's the most thorough tapping you're going to get. And on and on and on. And president's on Twitter. There's been no collusion. I've not worked with the Russians. Yeah, he met with a few, but so have the Democrats. In fact, who does the Russian ambassador sit with most often at the State of the Union? The Democrats. Who does he have over to the Russian embassy often? Democrats, elected officials. Who shows up at the Democratic fundraisers and the big to-dos that they have all over Washington, D.C.? Who's a major circulator in the cocktail party gatherings that happen in Washington, D.C.? The ambassador from Russia. Who's he usually hanging out with? The Democrats. So, I mean, miss me with all of this, but I'm sorry, you can't, because we've all been sitting here with bated breath, like, now what's going to happen? You know, whoo. So when are they going to bring out this report? We're scared. We're over here like, could there possibly have been some collusion that we just don't know about? Is there something that happened that we just didn't, was it accidental? Maybe he accidentally, told some Russians something and it ended up, there has been no material impact on the election. Yes, the Russians spent money. Yes, they tried to impact it. Yes, they hacked into numerous electoral systems, state systems around the country. Yeah, they used Facebook and Twitter to target ads. They had bots on Twitter. They did a whole lot of stuff. Some of the same stuff that we do in foreign countries. If you want to get real about everything, if you really want to just, have a conversation, America does it too. Uh-oh. Maybe I wasn't supposed to share that on here, but I think I've said it before, so it's okay. So this is what we're talking about. All of these details we've learned. Why? Because scratch a scandal, find a Democrat. That's why. I said it a year ago almost. What is this? February? As soon as they start talking about, well, it's Donald Trump, I said it's the Democrats. Who tells you what they're doing by accusing you of doing it? The Democrats. And who's guilty of collusion with the Russians? Probably some Democrats. Who paid for the dossier? Hillary Clinton. Who did they pay? Michael Steele. Where was he? Where did he get his info? Russians. So you think he might have paid some of those Russians for some of that info? So if money that was previously Hillary Clinton's and the DNC's made it into the hands of Michael Steele, who had paid Russians, doesn't that sound like a direct line to some Russian something or other? Some such something or other, as I often say to the kids. That's just some something such something or other. Don't ask me what it means. It's an indescribable thing. and that's what this is. So whether or not there's been any wrongdoing, we now have the Democrats admitting, because I'm going to tell you, it's no accident he's on this podcast. Senator Bob Casey, Democrat from Pennsylvania. Don't tell me he just woke up that morning and said, yeah, I'll come on your podcast. And by the way, I'm going to make this statement. He knew if he made this statement on this podcast that it would make it onto Real Clear Politics, one of the biggest political websites in the country. And he knew that when it made it to this website, radio hosts all over the country would hear that and they'd be reading it and talking about it and playing the audio. And he knew because that's what he wanted. He wants to start conditioning Democrats, especially those who aren't a part of the activist community, to start saying, pump the brakes. OK, we want a thorough investigation. We don't want to rush things. If it makes it past the midterms, that's OK with us. But that's a complete 180 from where they were. They were basically foaming at the mouth, demanding the result of this investigation because they just knew they were going to be able to say Donald Trump is not duly elected to the presidency because he used Russians and outside interference and he colluded and he tried to obstruct justice and therefore he's guilty. And who knows what they're going to eventually end up finding. But as soon as I hear someone who was saying full speed ahead, faster, 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 never mind the facts, never mind what we're doing here, just get it done as fast as possible. As soon as I hear the people who've been screaming that the loudest start to say, now we need to pump the brakes. Hold on a second. Let's just slow this thing down for a second. Let's calm down for a quick second. When you hear somebody make a turn like that, you better believe my ears are like, wait, I'm sorry, what? What did you just say? You want to slow down? Why? Why do we need to slow down now? Or do you know something? Do you know something new? What are we about to learn? I think we're about to learn that the Democrats have overplayed their hand yet again. There's something to be said for just knowing that God is in control and he holds all things in his hand. And when you're setting that boulder up to try to roll down on your neighbor, or in this case, Donald Trump, it's not that it's not rolling down on him because he's Donald Trump. He's human and he is just the same as all the rest of us. He's not above us. He's not below us. He's a man just like other men in this country. He's a person just like I'm a person. The reason it's not working is because if he were guilty of something, every bad deed comes to light. That's what the Bible says. The truth will out. So if he were guilty of something, we'd be learning about it. Look at all what we learned about Bill Clinton while he was in office and after. Look at the books that have been written about the Clintons and all kinds of other political players. I have an email that I got to find some time next week to go over it for those of you who are in Utah. Listeners in Utah, people who have family in Utah, you guys are considering electing Mitt Romney to the Senate to represent you. And I got this email is like 40 pages long. It's a catalog of everything that Mitt Romney was involved in during his political career. And the woman is making the case for not electing Mitt Romney to the Senate. Now, you're going to do what you're going to do. And I recommend that you inform yourself and then vote as you see so fit. But I'm going to go over the information on here. In other words, there is no hiding from what you've done. There's no hiding from your career in politics and what you've been involved in. You've been setting up boulders to roll down on other people. You better believe you're going to be getting crushed by your own stuff. Your own boulder right back on you. Squish. You're done. And that's what's happening to the Democrats. And now they want to pump the brakes. I say full speed ahead. Whee! Yippee! The ride is just getting good. We'll be back with Hour 2 after these messages. More Stacy on the Right up next on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio.
Urban Family Talk.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. Do you believe that we are living in the last days? In the culture we live in today, and dare I say even in our church culture, we are guilty of not looking towards Christ's return, but are in fact bogged down with the cares of this world. Do you find yourself more concerned about this world than you are about the world to come? Be encouraged to live as if Christ is coming back today. Stay connected at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The United Nations Security Council is meeting for a monthly session on the Middle East. United States Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, has also condemned the session's focus on conflicts between Palestinians and Israelis, when other countries have faced increased attacks that continue in the region.
ISIS has engaged in an inhumane level of cruelty in much of the region. They've been dealt severe setbacks in Iraq and Syria, but they are not completely yet destroyed, and they still pose serious threats. Egypt faces repeated terrorist attacks. And of course, there's the terrorist-sponsoring regime in Iran that initiates and encourages most of the troubles I just outlined. These immense security and humanitarian challenges throughout the region should occupy more of our attention rather than having us sit here month after month and use the most democratic country in the Middle East as a scapegoat for the region's problems.
There's a new indictment from the special counsel's office. John Decker has more.
Special counsel Robert Mueller has charged a lawyer for lying to his investigative team about his interaction with former Trump campaign advisor Rick Gates in September of 2016. Alex van der Zwaan is expected to plead guilty today. for lying about his failure to turn over an email communication to the special counsel's office. Van der Zwan's law firm had been hired to work for the Ukrainian Ministry of Justice to prepare a report on the trial of Yulia Tymoshenko, Ukraine's former prime minister. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
An Ohio sheriff says school shootings will never be stopped by gun control or mental health evaluations, but instead by meeting the threat head-on with force. In Cincinnati, Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones wants to train teachers and help them obtain a concealed carry permit, and he thinks those who are qualified should carry guns at school.
I determined that I'm going to do something. I'm not going to be like the other leaders in our country fighting over weapons and what's legal, what's not. We're going to actually do something. It's a community involvement. We're the 8th largest county in Ohio. We thought we'd offer 50 slots, and within 20 minutes we had 100. Within an hour we had 150. We'll probably be over 500. Wow. These are teachers, and when people say teachers don't want to be armed in school, that's not true.
Jones says it is not enough to have one armed security guard. It is the teachers who must be armed. President Trump's approval rating among evangelicals has dropped a modest 4 points in his first year in office. That might not sound like a lot, but as Steve Jordahl tells us, if it drops much more, the president may be doomed to one term.
When the American Culture and Family Institute polled born-again voters shortly after the election, 58% of them looked on President Trump favorably. 1 year later, 54% still see him that way. ACFI President George Barna says that 4% slide is about halfway to lame duck.
If you were to model a future election such that Mr. Trump lost 5% of the born-again vote, he would not be able to win enough of those swing states to be able to maintain his electoral college margin.
But instead of having 3 more years to shore up those numbers, Barna says President Trump has a mere 8 months.
The midterm elections are going to be critical. If the Democrats do win the House and the Senate, which is a possibility, all we're going to be hearing about is impeachment proceedings.
That, he says, would doom his conservative agenda and any hope he has of impressing the evangelical community.
Communications is going to be critical. His Twitter activity has died down a little bit. That's intentional. But there's going to have to be a lot of direct communication with the Christian community about the things that are taking place.
He says the president also has to have more high-profile successes with his pro-life and immigration reform efforts. So he says there is a path for him to follow. The question is, does he have the restraint to follow it? I'm Steve Jordahl.
American Family News is available online at onenewsnow.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Nothing can get done in the United States Senate for good unless we end the legislative filibuster. We're urging you today to call your senator and ask them to end the legislative filibuster so that we can defund Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in America. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121, or go to afaaction.net.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
8%. But why wouldn't everybody be for doing whatever we can do to make sure that if you sell a gun, if you give a gun, if you transfer a gun to somebody who uses it in the commission of a crime, you're going to be a part of a conspiracy of that crime. Just whatever we can do to make sure
you can track
that legal gun owners are legal gun owners, and those who aren't legal gun owners are going, if they use guns for the wrong reason, there's going to be a deterrent effect.
Let's make gun makers and sellers liable like anybody else.
But there's so many different tracks to this because you have to get the guns that are out there back in, and they're, millions. So we'll talk about this more.
That's not going to happen. But
well, no, you can do buyback There's a lot of ways to get them off the streets, and they work.
I will say you can do buyback programs, and since Australia did it in 1996, they haven't had another mass shooting. So, yeah, you can do voluntary.
It has to be multi-pronged.
It's got to be voluntary buyback program.
All right.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. 866-963-2037 are the call lines. They're wide open. And I'm giggling because, yeah, Australia did a gun buyback program and they took, what, just a few million guns off the street. They still have millions, tens of millions of guns in their country. They've had mass stabbing attacks. They've had other terroristic attacks, lorry attacks, you know, the European name for a box truck. They've had other mass killings in their country. They're also not America. I love the way liberals like to point to some other country and go, I'm going to be like them. Well, then take yourself on over there and be like them. Don't just be like them. Go over there and pay their exorbitant taxes. Give up your rights. Go over there. Don't talk about it. Be about it. Get over there. And stop boring us with your inane, senseless commentary. So that's going to work. First of all, when you look at the guns that you get back during these buyback programs, we just had one here in St. Louis. You get all the old, decrepit, worn down guns that don't fire, guns that don't work, antiques that have literally no physical value, an antique that you can't even pay an antique gun dealer to take off your hands. You get those guns back. You get a few guns that someone will find a gun somewhere near their home and they'll be like, well, what do I do with this? I don't want to throw it in the trash. Someone might find it. I don't want to turn it into the police. They might think it's actually mine. I found it. And so when they have gun buyback programs, people will go in their attic and, unearth a gun that they found somewhere or something that the ownership is questionable, and they'll take it and they'll get money for it in the buyback. And they don't get a lot of money for it, but at least they no longer have that gun in their house or anywhere near them. It's off the streets. It's a kind of a good Samaritan type thing. These gun buyback programs are not going to take 360 million guns, which is the estimate of how many guns are in this country. And as someone who strolled around the acres and acres and acres, it's 1 million square feet at the Sands in Las Vegas. It's a expo center that's connected to this huge hotel. And I got to tell you, there is no way that they're going to get the amount of guns that are currently in this country off the street by everybody just having a gun buyback program. As cash flush as our government is through borrowing and tax collection, we don't have enough dollars to collect all the guns. Not to mention the fact that most people just don't want to sell you their guns. I mean, how much are they going to pay me for my guns that I have? I don't have any decrepit guns. I don't have any non-functioning guns. And why would I want to sell them? The whole purpose to purchasing them is so we can defend ourselves if we need to. So, you hear them saying these crazy things. They basically just get on TV and they say whatever they want. It's like, just say whatever you want to say. Do whatever you want to do. It's Morning Joe. Just anything goes. But it's nonsense. It's nonsense, and we've got to start confronting it head on. Notice how Mika and Joe, who they were married to other people, and this is public knowledge, so it's not like I'm spilling the beans, and then they worked together for a while, and they decided that working together wasn't enough for them. They needed to be in a relationship, so they divorced their prospective spouses and married each other. Well, they haven't married each other yet, but they're openly dating now. So how are they going to tell the rest of us what we should do with our guns? They should probably tend to their own personal relationship, their own personal business. How about that? How about you focus in on what you have going on and stop trying to tell the rest of us what to do? And they're not talking about what happened with the FBI, the fact that the FBI dropped the ball in this case. This shooting didn't have to happen. They're not talking about the tens of thousands of kids out there who've seen this. Now it's a major news story. It's got legs. And these kids are at home. They've been bullied. They've got problems. They don't have the kind of guidance that they need. They don't have anybody that they can go to and say, I'm struggling. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with myself. I feel like hurting people. They don't have anybody to go to. And instead of Morning Joe and Mika having a conversation about that reality, they just want to do the virtue signaling thing. They're virtue signaling. Well, what we should do is we should collect all the guns. Well, come get them, Joe, Mika. Come on through. As the youth like to say, come through, Joe. Come through, Mika. Exactly how do you plan on getting them? Exactly what elected officials on the Democratic side want to run in the midterms on the gun confiscation platform? Every time the Democrats have been in charge, and it has been numerous times, and numerous times where they've been in charge, where they've had the presidency and a veto-proof majority, and they've never done anything about guns, and they've never done anything substantial about immigration. Do you want to know why? Because they know it would be the end of the Democrats as we know them. And we have a little bit more audio. So I want to get to this New York Times columnist who has this gun control proposal. But then he admits that if his proposal were to go through, and his name is Andrew Ross Sorkin, that it would make firearms more difficult to track. I mean, this is just astounding. If you listen to this guy, first of all, have a seat, sit back, maybe get your libations going, and think about what you're going to hear this guy say, that this guy writes columns for the New York Times. He is a respected journalist. This is what passes for, you know, the thought world. He's a thought shaper because he writes a column for the New York Times. So he shapes opinion in America today. Just get a load of this guy. It's number 2.
This going.
I buy it. I like the idea. Have you made the outgoing calls? Have you called Citibank, Visa, Jamie Dimon over at JP Morgan?
I'm going to save some of these folks for the moment because I did have a lot of conversations with a lot of very well-known CEOs that you know. Most of these conversations took place on background over the weekend as I was trying to socialize this idea and try to understand their viewpoint. I will tell you the scariest part of these conversations was so many of them said, you know what, I like the idea. There's part of us that actually would like to do something like this, but we are scared about 2 things. Part of it is we're scared about the economic potential boycott that could happen both from the NRA and gun owners who say, you know what, if JP Morgan does this, we're not going to use their cards. The other thing that's even more nerve-wracking, though, is a lot of them said, you know what, I don't want to put my employees in harm's way. I actually think that there could be an incident if we were to do this. I don't want to bring attention to ourselves. And that's a very, very scary thing. You know, when Starbucks came out with its its ban on, or at least its recommendation to say, look, we don't want our customers coming in with guns, there were people who staged protests with guns at Starbucks stores. And that created a very scary environment for employees. So I think that there's a lot to be said about how you do this, sort of the layering effect. And I think hopefully, because I've got now a lot of incomings, just even since the article has been posted, I think there's an ongoing conversation behind the scenes, and I hope it comes to the fore. I hope people get a chance to see.
Okay, so if you guys remember last year, so first off, who's he? It's Andrew Ross Sorkin, and he's talking to Stephanie Ruhle on CNN, and they're discussing this whole proposal of his. Basically, he's saying that businesses should refuse, financial institutions should refuse to do businesses that have anything to do with the gun industry. Now, the reason why this idea is, first of all, ludicrous on its face and shows how uninformed this man is because this was already the rule du jour for the Obama administration. If you remember, they had Operation Choke Point. I wrote about it for America's First Freedom. We covered it on the program. We even interviewed guests about it. Operation Choke Point was, so they would take categories of business. Pornography was one, and the check businesses where they cash your checks and they also give you payday loans, they were one, and they included the firearms industry in that. And so what was happening was small businesses like someone who sold firearm accessories like silencers or holsters, or someone who did, accessories for women, the corset holsters or what have you, or they were actual gun salespeople. They would have a small gun store in a town or something. So they're not doing millions and millions and millions of dollars in business. They're doing small amounts of money in business, but it's their livelihood, and they're banking with JP Morgan Chase or, First Bank or something like that. And what happened was, the banks were incentivized by the Obama administration and Operation Choke Point to simply say, they would send a letter and they'd say, we're not going to do business with you anymore. But instead of saying, here's a bank that we're transferring your business to, as a normal bank is going to facilitate you doing the business that you need to do because they have a reputation to defend. But because they were given cover by the Obama administration, these banks were just sending out a letter. All of a sudden, they have no way to pay their employees. Their money is sitting in basically a holding account. They need to take it out. And when you've been shut down by one bank, other banks are naturally wary of taking your business. So some of the times they would literally cut the people off without a letter. Other times they'd cut them off, but they'd make it so different for them to get at their money that they were going out of business. And so when the public found out about Operation Choke Point and that gun salespeople, lawful FFL holders, so federally licensed firearm dealers and accessories salespersons, business owners, were being basically criminalized, then it became a big deal, and some senators got involved, and there were some news stories done about it, and the banks had egg on their face because, remember, not only is the NRA a lobbying organization with, perhaps 5 million members, who really knows, but millions of Americans own firearms. So imagine sitting at your table and finding out that your bank that you bank at, or the bank that handles all of your financial investments. And remember, so as a population, NRA members tend to be wealthier, have more liquid assets held in investment accounts, and more inclined to make luxury purchases. So when he suggests this, he says he's on background with all of these bank CEOs and these important people in the banking industry. And he's going to them and he's suggesting that they basically reinstitute Operation Choke Point, which when done by the government was actually criminal behavior. He's wanting them to do it on their own. You don't need the cover of the Trump administration because you'll never get it. You don't have the Obama administration anymore, but why not institute an Operation Choke Point of your own? Voluntarily run these businesses out on a rail. Don't take their business. Don't handle their funds. And he says, these people are like, well, wait a minute now. These guns will still be sold somewhere. They'll be moved to cash, or people will use Bitcoin, and that will make it harder to track. So he knows right off the bat that, number one, his solution to run people who are in the gun industry out of business is untenable. I mean, if you don't believe me, go to SHOT Show.org and look at the list of exhibitors, and then understand me when I say there were 65,000 people at SHOT Show, and none of them were there politically. Of course, the NRA was represented. Operation Child Safe was Eddie Eagle, the training program for kids for guns through the NRA. There were a number of politically oriented individuals there, but all of the vendors were there strictly as a trade show operation. And they were selling not just to American purchasers, but to people who were here from Japan, Australia, India. It was like an international deal. I heard all kinds of languages being spoken as I was walking through in the different areas that I toured on the floor. That SHOT Show is the industry, the gun industry, the accessories industry, and it's a multi-billion-dollar type of a deal. And so for banks to say, we're going to wall ourselves off from a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the attendant consequences of that action being that if I found out that the bank that we bank with or we have our investments with was all of a sudden going to choke off businesses that were affiliated with the Second Amendment, we would move all of our holdings, as would many other people who have far greater holdings than we do. This is untenable, and it's ridiculous for this man who is a thought leader and opinion maker in America's ethos for the Fourth Estate, for him to even put this forward, and they gave him the largesse to do so. The idea is idiotic. He should have his operations choked off by the bank and see how it feels. Then maybe he'd understand how wrong it is to punish people for holding the different view from you. But oh wait, he's a liberal, so he can't get that message. It is impenetrable. His brain is like a fortress. No clear thinking ideas can enter. Ridiculous. All right, when we get back, we're going to have more Stacy on the Right for you. Oh my goodness, 866-963-2037 are the call lines. Stay there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. We still have seats available for our September tours, Washington, D.C. and Williamsburg. Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon, that's one tour. And then Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, that is a separate tour. Now, we put them back to back so you can do both. If you're flying in from Texas or Montana or California or wherever you may be coming from, so that you can do those tours back to back with us if that's something you so choose to do. Now, Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation will be with us all along the way as our historian. Stephen will add context, he'll answer questions, talk about the people, the places, the events that make up our early American history. So for more information on this Spiritual Heritage Tour, go to the website spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com for the September tour information.
Up next, Carol Swain with 2 minutes to think about it. From poverty to professor, from GED to PhD, a bold Christian speaking truth to power. Here's Carol with today's 2 minutes.
Hello, folks. When we think of the Protestant Reformation, we think of a period of time in the church when centuries of confusing and sometimes contradictory dogma and practice were stripped away from the church like you might strip layers of paint off an old house. The Reformers wanted to get back to the basics of the gospel message and the practices of the early church. Today in the American church, we have somehow developed this idea that anything old or that came before our particular pastor or our particular denomination has to be wrong. That type of thinking separates us from a lot of very good, very orthodox church history and teaching that could enrich our lives and strengthen our walk with Christ. One idea many modern Christians don't practice or even know much about is the season of Lent. Far more than just giving up a dessert that you already don't like for a few weeks, it's a season of 40 days for self-denial, spiritual growth, and taking spiritual inventory of our lives. Giving things up helps us to concentrate on the spiritual, ridding ourselves of some of our daily distractions. If Jesus fasted 40 days before he began his ministry, it seems little to ask for us to follow his example, examining our lives for the 40 days before we come to the heaviness of the Good Friday cross and the joy of the empty tomb on Easter Day.
To learn more about Carol and the Carol Swain Foundation, visit carolmswain.net and make sure you follow her on Facebook at Professor Carol M. Swain and on Twitter at Carol M. Swain.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
We're back. We actually did not listen to Gun Control 2 number 3, but we also have our guest here right now. So I want to get to our guest, Will Roberts, Vice Chair of the College Republicans for University of Alabama, Outreach Director for Young Americans for Freedom. It's a pretty awesome organization, YAF. Thank you so much for coming on today, Will.
Thank you for having me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I mean, I was feeling a little tired earlier. It's a really dark and gloomy day here. There's a lot of rain. It's kind of warm. You know how it is when it's raining and it's warm? It makes you want to just take a nap. And I've been up since early this morning. And so just before the show, I'm feeling like, can I do a show? And then I heard the music and I was behind the mic. I'm like, I'm doing a show. I'm ready.
That's great to hear. It's sunny here, so it's been raining the past few days, so I'm glad to finally have a sunny day.
Oh, yeah, nice. I'm glad that you guys have that going on. So Dimitri says you're coming on to talk about Mitt Romney's Senate bid. So first of all, are you supportive or non-supportive? Where do you stand on Mitt Romney coming into the Senate for Utah?
I am 100% supportive of Mitt Romney being the next United States Senator for the state of Utah. I think that he ran a great 2012 campaign when he was running against then President Barack Obama. And I think he totally deserves the full support of the Republican Party in the general election bid. I saw last night that President Trump endorsed him. I think that was a good strategic move to ensure that the Utah Senate seat, I don't think we have to worry about it, whether it be Mitt Romney or not, but I think it's a good strategic move to ensure that whoever's running for that seat is basically a shoo-in. I think Mitt Romney gives us that opportunity so we can focus our efforts elsewhere to ensure that we keep control of the Senate in 2018.
Now, is there someone else running against him, or is he running unopposed?
There's a few candidates running against him, but I don't think there's anyone major. I know Mike Lee's former chief of staff thought about running for it, and then when Governor Romney got into the race, he decided, or when there was rumor that Governor Romney was going to get into the race, he decided to back off that. And so, but I don't think anyone serious is running against him. No one is going to pose, should pose a real challenge to him at least.
Okay. So what is it that Mitt Romney hopes to do representing the state of Utah in the Senate? Because he has been a critic of President Trump. I understand that President Trump has endorsed him, yippee, yay, but he was previously a part of the Never Trump movement. So how does he add value in the Senate when we're already kind of in the fight of our lives for the Senate right now? He goes in, will he be kind of a replacement John McCain, someone who sits in the middle of the aisle and continuously reaches across to Democrats, or is he going to move to the right and really represent the conservative wing of the party?
I think that Senator Mitt Romney is going to be probably, I would assume, the best Mitt Romney we're going to see, because I think he's doing this purely out of want and purely out of wanting to serve the people of Utah. He thinks that he's the best choice that they have right now. So I don't think that we can accurately say that he's going to be another John McCain. I think we've seen him moderate on his stance on the president over time, especially as we've seen the policies the president has enacted. Some of those policies are different from the ones he campaigned on. I think anyone who would have watched the campaign would agree to that point. But I think that Senator Romney is probably going to be an independent voice for Utah. He might not be Trump's greatest ally in the Senate, but I also think that he will be an ally on many issues, whether it be the economy. He's going to be a great help on foreign policy and helping to help Rex Tillerson out dealing with North Korea and Russia and so many other issues that are plaguing the administration that they're having to now deal with because past administrations didn't.
Okay. So I understand what you're saying, and I'm not inherently against any person who's a Republican, but my concern is that we've had our Jeff Flakes, we've had our John McCains, we've had our, even Lindsey Graham has been very spotty in his allegiance to true Republican ideals. And what we really need in the Senate right now is someone who can go in there and passionately articulate Republican Party platform, language. We really need someone who, first of all, knows the platform, agrees with it, and plans to go in and support it. And then not just to be a rubber stamp for the president. I don't want anyone to be that, but someone who understands what the president's goals are in his first term, his first administration as president, and supports those goals wholeheartedly. There are a number of things, such as the immigration issues that we have. We need people who understand where the president is coming from and supports him on those. So how do the people of Utah understand that Mitt Romney is that person?
I think one of the things I think we do have to start to make, especially in this time where we have this kind of imperial presidency, and it didn't start with President Trump, it started way before that. But the Senate is an independent body of government, and so they, in my opinion at least, should swear no allegiance to whether the president is in their party or not. They should make the best decision for their citizens. That's why we, elect them. That for me means that if Senator Romney or candidate Romney runs on an issue of allowing more immigration, legal immigration, and ensuring that legal immigrants are welcome here and feel welcomed here, and the people of Utah vote for him, then that is a policy that you should pursue in the Senate, whether that's the president's policy or not. And so that also means helping them understanding that you're going to have to find a middle ground between what the president believes and what you believe. You're not going to get 3 million new legal immigrants when the president's calling for 500,000. But I think we can find a happy medium in between that and compromise in the party to bring ourselves closer. I mean, even President Trump is calling for 1.8 million illegal immigrants to be able to become citizens. The right wing of our party is completely unabashed and unopposed to that, and won't even listen to the president now. I think President Trump has been one of the strongest immigration presidents we've had, and if he's calling for 1.8 million, the least I think many conservatives in the Senate could do is hear him out and hear why he thinks that is a befitting number. And so I think compromises in our party is going to be the key in that regard with Mitt Romney and President Trump.
Yeah, I've got no problem with compromising. The problem is that the compromise that's being offered. So it's a negotiating tactic. First of all, the 1.8 million instead of 800,000 or 700 or 600,000 is a negotiating tactic. It's meant to illustrate how intransigent the Democrats are on this issue. They want nothing less than unfettered immigration from the third world with no enforcement. That's what they want. So the president is demonstrating that. I happen to be a part of that hard right that feels like it's a mistake, not because negotiating is the problem, but because the Democrats can never be relied upon to hold up their end of the bargain. The deal that's been struck is the best one we've ever had because it ends chain migration, but it doesn't have mandatory E-Verify. And in exchange for legalizing all of these immigrants who, they were brought here as children, it leaves the door open for there to be this trust fund for the wall. And then trust funds are notorious for being emptied out by members of Congress. The trust fund's there, it has money in it, but before that money gets moved into the implementation of the wall, it's the money, it evaporates. Or a future Democratic president says, let the money sit there, we're not going to build the wall. I would prefer to see a proposal that offered, if you're going to offer legalization to 1.8 million people, they're legalized, but they can never vote. That's the price they pay for being brought here illegally. It's not their fault, but it's the price they pay because they're jumping the line. And then in exchange for their legalization without the right to vote, then you have all of these other things that have to be done within the first term of the president. So the wall has to be completed, not just funded, but completed. E-Verify has to be the law of the land. We have to have the end of chain migration, et cetera, et cetera. Without those things, this is a giveaway. 1.8 million is just, and it's the first bite. The Democrats will never be satisfied with just the kids themselves. Their parents have to be legalized as well, which puts us in the vicinity of more like 6 or 7 million. And then once they're legal and they bring in their family members, now you've got all of the illegal aliens. They've been legalized, and we've still not changed anything about our immigration program.
I think that you're exactly correct when you say it's definitely a negotiating tactic, and it's definitely showed the Democrats' hand that they're really not fighting for dreamers. They're fighting for themselves. They're fighting for future votes. They're fighting for a rigging of the system, really, against American citizens and even against dreamers, really, because 1.8 million is far above how many dreamers are currently under the system. And so, again, I think that the best thing that the president can do is show that he is at the table. Now it's time for Democrats to come to the table, and I think he's shown that. I think that it's unhelpful in the regard to do that and then go and attack other Republicans who are also at the table with you, just simply because they favor more legal immigration than the president would consider good for the country. I don't think that's a good idea. But I definitely would contend to agree that Democrats have shown, the president's shown the Democrats' hand that they want unfettered, ridiculous levels of immigration simply because they want more votes in the future.
I think it was illustrative. I mean, if you think about it, what more could he have done to prove that the Democrats really don't care about dreamers or DACA recipients? They don't. If they did, they would have taken the deal immediately because it legalizes so many more than what they originally said they wanted. But they're not taking it because if you're horse trading, 1.8 million is 1.8 million is a drop in the bucket to year after year after year of that 1 million through chain migration being zero or, a tenth of that. It's just, it's not the deal you want to make if your idea is to flood the country with people from places where the people would be reliable Democratic voters, which is what they hope for.
Yeah, I also believe that the wall, I think the best way for the president to get the wall, like you said, giving him a trust fund is really not giving him the wall. It's giving him, it's dangling something out there just to pull it back later on. And so I think that he placed a 10-year hiatus on legal our citizenship for DACA recipients. I think that what should be included in that is none of those DACA recipients can even apply for citizenship until the wall is built. I don't know if you can say that it'll be built, it has to be contended to be built in his first term. I don't know if the federal government doesn't work that well, and so I don't know if it can get done that quickly. hopefully the president can fix that issue. I know he's done a lot of things, tackling regulations on that side. But I definitely think that the wall or citizenship for DACA recipients should be contingent on the building of the wall and increased border security across the board, not just the wall, but high-tech technology and things like that, too. Because like you said, trust funds are a sham, really.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea, Will. I mean, if we sat here for a few more minutes, we could probably solve this thing for real. Like, that's a brilliant idea. So you get legalization when the wall is built. All of a sudden, you now have 1.8 million people who are desperate to see the wall go up because they want to see it go up and get their legalization before anyone else can be elected who could take it away, right? So now you've got a lot of people who are gunning for it. And by extension, others who support the DACA recipients would say it's a fair deal. A deal's a deal. Before they get their citizenship, the wall gets completed. So let's see it get done. I think the one person out of all the different people who ran in the election in 2016, to have a man who his specialty is construction projects, bringing things in under budget, to see President Trump pull this off, it's within the realm of possibility. Because I agree with you, Will, government is inefficient and it's not equipped to do, projects on time under budget. But President Trump knows how to make that happen. So, he's done that in the private sector. I'd love to see him do it again. I'll give you the last word on this. We have about a minute.
I would definitely agree. If anybody can do it, it's the president. Once he puts his mind to something, he's going to get it done. And he's going to make sure that it gets done the best possible way that it can. Thank you for having me on the show so much. It's been great. I love talking to you. I love discussing these issues. I hope you're back sometime.
Hey, we hope to have you back soon. Thank you so much for taking the time out today. And, I'm not a huge Mitt Romney fan. I'm just going to come clean with you. But you have made, a case for the viability of him going into the Senate. He does have the name recognition. And I wonder, because I don't know the names of anyone who's running against him, if that's kind of a telltale sign that there's not anyone running against him who's strong enough to defeat him in this race. And if he does go to the Senate, I sincerely hope that he really pays attention to his constituency, the people who are sitting in there, if he's the one who goes. That Utah's a reliably conservative state, so I hope he really, hews to the voters as you described, which I'm hoping that's what his plan is. So thank you so much, Will Roberts, Vice Chair of the College Republicans for University of Alabama, Outreach Director for Young Americans for Freedom, which is one of my favorite youth orgs. You guys are awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. All right. So it's one of those things where, I don't live in Utah. You guys know we live in Missouri, and we have our own little set of problems here that we're dealing with. I think the whole idea with Utah, Mitt Romney's the best y'all can do. Come on, guys. It's not just name recognition. It's not just someone who's run for office before. I keep thinking he's going to just hang his shoes up. He's kind of like Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton won't go be a grandparent. She won't go away. Mitt Romney's like that too. Don't you have like 20 grandkids you could just be taking care of? Come on. Anyway, we're going to be back with more Stacy on the right after this. We're going to get that audio that we missed, the gun control, Andrew Ross Sorkin. More to discuss on that. We'll take some calls, 866-963-2037. Stay there. Stacy on the right.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
I think when I started, I had the same goals as everyone. I wanted to be the best coach that I could be. I never looked at my job as purely a football coach. As I started up the ladder and started interviewing for jobs, I think that was probably the buzzword about me. Well, he's not necessarily as focused in on football and winning as maybe some people would be. His language, his demeanor is not what we're used to. But I wanted to show people that I could do it in that way, and I could still be a Christian, honor the Lord, but be successful in what isn't really perceived as a Christian environment.
New York Times best-selling author Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, "The sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do." In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for His service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com. The church has to take the lead in ensuring that men are properly trained for fatherhood. We have an epidemic in which boys are not growing up with their fathers. So as Christian men, we have to stand in the gap and make up the hedge so that our communities are not destroyed. When we see fatherhood as a blessing and not an inconvenience, we will see children as spiritual weapons in our arsenal. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. urbanfamilytalk.com.
I come to steal, kill, and to destroy. You belong to me. Your soul, your mind, and your body. You chose death over life. You are mine, forever and ever and ever.
Hell is real. Matthew chapter 25 verse 46 says there will be those who will receive eternal punishment in hell, but the righteous will have eternal life in heaven with our Savior Jesus Christ. Which will you choose? Let's go deeper at urbanfamilytalk.com.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
In cryptocurrencies, if JP Morgan, Visa, Citibank all said you can no longer do your business with us, wouldn't that be a boon for the blockchain world?
Maybe. No, and that's, by the way...
Maybe, definitely. If you can't use... I mean, that's definitely where you're going to go.
And the other thing, right, look, the bad news about the proposal I've made, I'll be very, very straightforward about it, is you will move to the extent that these guns will still be sold somewhere. It'll be moved into cash, or people will use Bitcoin, and it will be harder to track. I don't disagree, but I think that everything you can do to make it harder, more expensive to get at these types of guns and this type of equipment, especially the high capacity magazines and the like, and bump stocks and things like that, I think that you've done a disservice if you're not trying to get that out of people's hands.
Yeah. Okay. So that is the little bit of audio left from Andrew Ross Sorkin. He's doing this, around the world media tour to promote the idea that we should, as a society, if you disagree with someone on something, you should literally prevent them from being able to do business, especially if the activity is actually legal. Now, imagine if the pro-life movement said, we want to prevent Planned Parenthood from being able to do business. We only want them defunded by the federal government. We want private dollars to fund that activity. You want to fund abortions? Use your own money. Stop taking money from taxpayers and giving it to this abortion giant that literally exists to exterminate blacks and Hispanics and anybody who has any kind of learning difficulties. But, oh no, we can't do that. We can't defund Planned Parenthood. But if you want to defund the gun industry by eliminating their ability to do business in the banking field, well, that's fine, because, that's something liberals want to do. And we always have to agree with the liberals, which brings me to our moment of the day for me, which I'm still in shock that this is a thing. And that is Senate Bill 564. So if you're in Missouri, this is important. If you're not in Missouri, this is important because these kinds of bills are happening all over the country as electric companies basically buy their way into the hearts of our Republican legislators and get them to agree to this garbage. What is the garbage? Smart meters. Now, you might have heard about the smart meters. You might not have. What's going to happen in Missouri if they pass SB 564? It's in committee right now. Tomorrow, they're supposed to have hearings on it at 5 p.m. But when they heard all of the phone calls from angry Missourians, they've now said they're going to sit and do, instead of hearings, they're taking the bill to committee. They're going to sit with it in committee, which is a private process where voters and taxpayers can't come in and testify. So this bill will raise your family's electric bill. And I want you, if you're not in Missouri, I want you to understand what happens when they bring the smart meters in so you can put a stop to it in your neighborhood. I've already had people across the country in states where the smart meters are already there reach out to me online on Facebook and say, yeah, we had the same thing happen to us. We weren't able to stop it. These people have been wined and dined by Ameren UE and other electrical conglomerates. They're basically taking them out to dinner and telling them, we need these smart meters. We need to be able to make our jobs easier and it'll save money. And in the beginning, the costs do go down, but then they skyrocket back up, just like President Obama promised that they would back when he was in charge. So there's no general cap that's been set. No, there will be new surcharges and taxes added to energy efficient investment funds. New taxes and surcharges on solar energy. The grid will immediately become more vulnerable to EMP attacks. There are no opt-outs in SB 564. So in other words, if you don't want a smart meter, if you say, I just want to keep my traditional meter, they're not going to ask you. There is no opt-out. They will be on your property installing the smart meter when you're not home. You come home, what are you doing? I'm with Ameren UE and I'm authorized to install the smart meter. What can you do? Ameren is very sure they're not going to reduce the amount of money that they're receiving. What business goes to legislators and says, please reduce the amount of money we're able to charge our customers? Nobody does that. So there is opt-out language that has been brought to these legislators and they've been told, hey, take this. And huge thanks to Senator Jill Shoup. She's the state senator from the district that I live in for opposing this bill in the Senate, but now it's over in the state house and they're planning on putting it forward. And just so you know how they paid this thing off beforehand, electric utilities have contributed about $900,000 to just the sitting Missouri senators. That total doesn't include what they've contributed to the reps. Ameren spent $35,000 last year on lobbyist expenditures. That's lobbyists taking people they want to wine and dine to dinner. Ameren's stock rose almost 3% the day the bill passed the Senate. Investors are getting happy because they know they're going to make more money. And utilities are monopolies that have no competition, which they're allowed to earn 9.5% return on their investments. So the Consumer Council of Missouri estimates ratepayers will see an increase of up to 20% on our electric bills yearly. 20%. Imagine what you're paying, then add 20% to it. That kind of a hike should be illegal, but it's here in the bill. Ameren and Spire, which are the two electrical conglomerates here in Missouri, they're the biggest donors, some of the biggest donors to the Missouri Chamber of Commerce. So we've got to put a stop to this. I have two phone numbers for you to call. The first is for Representative Bill Kidd. His number is 573-751-3624. I'm sorry, 3674. 573-751-3674. He's in District 20. Call him and tell him you want him to put a stop to this. Jack Bondon, 573-751-2175. He's in District 56. Call him and tell him you want to put a stop to this. This post is on my Facebook page. I just set it to public so anyone can see it. And I'll put it over on the Stacy on the Right Show page. This is one of those situations where I'm asking you to make a phone call. 20% on the electric bill is a hardship for any family. I don't care what income bracket you're in, because the bigger the house, the more you pay in electric. Even if you have a small house and you're paying a small electric bill, adding 20% to that for what? What are you getting exactly except a meter that literally can tell when you've been at home, when you turned on your dishwasher, how many TVs you have on at the same time? It's tracking you. It's like one of those Google home devices tracking and listening to your every word, only it's tracking and listening to your electric usage. And it weakens the grid and makes us more susceptible to EMP. With Kim Jong-un over there bouncing his little fat self around and acting really crazy, why would we want to make ourselves more susceptible to electromagnetic pulse radiation? Why? Why would we do that? So I'm asking you guys to make that phone call. make that happen. Let them know we're not okay with this. And if you're in a state where you don't yet have smart meters, keep your eyes peeled for when they bring forward the new bills. Legislative sessions for state legislatures are open all over the country. And electric conglomerates want these bills because they give them more control, command and control, really, over their consumers, and they let them charge them more money. But you're still getting the same electric. It's not like your air conditioning or your heating, if it's electric, it's going to be more rich or more flavorful or, moisturize your face a little more so you don't get wrinkles. It's just going to be the same old stuff. You'll just be paying more for it. And for what? So now I want to pivot over to what we started the show out with. We're going to close it up. And that is the day that marks the end of the DNC's Russia collusion conspiracy theory. And it's our good friend, the RNC's Kayleigh McEnany. And she just lays the case out. It's number one.
Let's bring in our power panel right now. We have Kayleigh McEnany. She is spokesperson for the RNC. Jamu Green is a former candidate for DNC chair and a distinguished fellow at the Athena Center for Leadership at Barnard College. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Kayleigh, your reaction?
Today marks the day that the Democrats' Russia collusion conspiracy theory unraveled, because what we learned is astonishing. We learned that the Russians were also organizing for Bernie Sanders. We learned that in late November of 2016, they then turned their efforts to be against President Trump, that their goal was to sow discord and chaos, not to promote a certain candidate, and that no Americans were involved in this plot that they uncovered. This is astonishing. It backs up what the Democrats have said all along. Dianne Feinstein saying it was all based on rumors and newspapers, but not necessarily evidence. Now we know that to be true. Democrats deceived this country, and they were caught today.
Oh, wow. So the Democrats are now backpedaling, right? That's what they're doing. And why are they backpedaling? Because, well, first of all, that's what they do. And second of all, because now it's going to be the remainder of the American people. So, there's people like yourself. If you're listening to this show, you're politically active, you're listening to this program, you want to know what's going on in government, and you keep yourself informed. There are multiple, I'd say 100 million people at least, who they only pay attention to politics when there's an election. They really start ramping up. Like they know there's a big midterm election in November of 2018. They'll start right before the actual primary in August, and they'll start paying attention. They'll start consuming a little more news. They'll go to their favorite websites and catch up a little bit. They might mention it to a friend, someone who they know is politically the same as themselves, and they just want to kind of catch up a smidge. A lot of Americans live that way. And you know what? I'm just going to take a moment here and say, it must be nice. It must be nice to not pay attention to politics and just live and only pay attention to it when it literally knocks on your door. Wow, that must be carefree. It must just be so wow. Anyway, and so that's what they do. And so what the Democrats don't want is for just when people are beginning to pay attention, the end of the summer, the primaries are coming to a close. People have to decide who they're going to vote for the primary. They don't want people kind of waking up to politics again for the midterm election to news that the Democrats have been lying for a year and a half about Russian collusion. And that's why Kayleigh McEnany just said their narrative just fell apart. She had that audio on, I believe it was the weekend. Maybe she was on TV. I'm not sure what day specifically. But she says it marks the end of the DNC's Russia collusion conspiracy theory. Now, I didn't cut the audio from Jamu Green, who immediately said, no, we need to know what's going on. And she went back. She basically just pulled her old talking points back out and spewed those out for a few minutes and tried to make it seem as if Kayleigh was making a statement that was untrue. It is true. So if there were anything to crow about, who would be crowing right now? The Democrats. They would be all over CNN. They would be all over every channel there is available to them, talking about how they were right all along. And look at the horrors that, look at this, look at this, look at this. They would. They're not doing that. So what does it mean? We don't even have to put our high-powered thinking caps on. We know what it means. It means that there's no collusion. She's talking about the indictment of the 13 Russians over their role in the 2016 election. And remember, if there were any Americans involved, they would have been indicted as well. If there was anyone, especially if they're a Republican, who had anything to do with what those 13 Russians were involved in, they would have been indicted, and it would have been publicly announced, and the Democrats would be dancing barefoot in the street, just whipping and nay-nay in their little heart's content. They would not be able to contain themselves. And so the idea that this is anything but a complete and utter crazy pants witch hunt is ludicrous. Absolutely, untenably ludicrous. So, there it is. There it is. So I want to point you guys over to a new website where you can find some content that is soon going to be all over the place, and that's americasvoice.network. Check out the content over there. I happen to be up over there. The Stacy on the Right show is going to be a part of their lineup, and we're really grateful for that. And I'm really excited that we get to have a chance to do that and to be a part of what they're doing. And so for the end of the show today, I want to give you guys, we just have a minute left, a little bit of encouragement from Romans. So we've been learning about all of the goodness of God, all of the different things that God is able to do for us, that we, in some ways, we don't access all of what's available to us. We have God the Father just waiting to answer our prayers. And we worry and we fret and we try to plan and move things around. And, what can we really do? We can do a lot. We should work hard. We should focus our efforts. We should be obedient. We should pray. But in the end, it's all up to God. And so praying is a part of what we really need to do. So this is what is known in the Bible as, they think it's one of the first hymns ever written. And it's Romans 11:33. Oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable his judgments and his paths beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord? Or who has been his counselor? Who has ever given to God that God should repay them? Far from him and through him and for him are all things. To him be the glory forever. Amen. Who has given anything to God? Who was there when he formed the earth, when he formed the universe, when he created all of the things that we see out of the power of his mouth? Who was it? It wasn't any of us. That's because we are his creation. And that is what is so awe-inspiring. I've been listening to this book on audio CD about Benaiah, who chases a lion into a snowy pit, a pit on a snowy day. And the book is amazing. And I'm hoping to share some of that with you when I'm back on the program. It's inspiring language that we should all get to hear to keep ourselves uplifted. Thank you so much for being here today. God bless you. StacyOnTheRight.com for more content. See you soon.
The views and opinions expressed in